everybody, and welcome to the Awaken Cast. I'm your host, Remy. I'm always excited about every episode that I do, but this one is one that I have been looking forward to and am super excited. I really love when I have guests on. With that being said, some of you may know her from TikTok, my dear friend, Rachel, aka Sunfyre.
Hello, it's me.
It's so great to have you on today's episode.
It's so great to be here. Thank you.
So before we start this episode, people who don't know you, where can they find you? And do you have anything you would like to promote?
You can find me on TikTok and Instagram, both at SunfyreDnD. And I also just partnered up with a shop online called TTRPG Swag. And they are a nerdy apparel website. So you can find all of the clothing that I have designed, including little like fanny packs and backpacks, which is very fun.
We are really excited to talk about various topics today. How we can utilize props and miniatures at our table, integrating our characters' backstories to our games, and finally, the difference between online D&D versus in-person, because there is a lot of difference between the two. It's going to be a fun conversation today, and who knows, we may get into some Dungeons and Tangents along the way. As you enter the Shrine of Baphomet, the cultists brandish their sacrificial daggers at you. Roll for initiative, and try not to get stabbed on today's episode. Welcome to episode 6, Beyond the Screen, Props and Plots in D&D. As we dive into this episode, we're going to be talking about so many things. A lot is probably us going on tangents, but if you want to feel like you're part of a conversation or the feeling of eavesdropping on a conversation you probably shouldn't listen to, you'll love this episode. So let's get right into it. First, we want to talk about utilizing props and miniatures. How do you come up with all of it?
Honestly, it's just kind of whatever's happening in the day. I feel like it's easier to come up with props for combat situations because at least that point you kind of know where you're fighting, you know? So you can do trees and terrain and stuff like that. But it is also really fun to just be like, if there's a big moment in the campaign, to just do something like really fun about it. And I'm actually really sad because I haven't been able to do a lot of like prop making recently. And so I like really want to make some props because I'm like, I haven't done it.
This is some of the things that I utilize in my games, in-person games, is this used to be a scroll that had a wax stamp on it. So what I did for my players, we're playing Strixhaven. They were at orientation, so they had to do like a scavenger hunt under all their chairs. So at one point, they get into the biblioplex. They're like, oh, this is cool. And then I'm like, you hear this voice in your head, and down from the sky, you see glitter just form into your hands as you're given this scroll. Now everybody reach under your chair. And so everybody reached under their chair and they're like, what? I like actually got it all printed out. I printed it all on this linen paper so that it feels like really legit.
I love it.
Yeah, and because it is a college, I actually gave them like a little mailer with their names on it and their acceptance letter.
That's so cute. What? An acceptance letter?
Yeah. So like I actually,
oh my God, I love it.
So like before the game actually started, so like in our session 0, I gave it to them before we started the game so that they could be like, ooh, looking forward to the first session.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's so cute. Oh, that's so great. Now I'm jealous.
For me, that's how I utilize the props and miniatures in my game, because I'm more of, I want my players to be a lot more immersed. I focus more on the role play aspects of the game. So having the scroll and the acceptance letter is my way of being like, okay, I'm throwing you the immersion at your face and you won't be able to uncanny dodge that shit.
That's amazing. I think one of the favorite props that I made a little cake, and I carved it into a heart, and I put the little symbol of the class. And in the actual session of the game, they had to eat a heart to obtain some powers. I presented them a little cake heart, and I was like, now you can eat it. That was really fun.
Small things like that I find are just so much fun and a lot more memorable.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I recently made my players some little they're not really spell scrolls. They were like ripped old pictures of a journal or whatever. And I also gave them a lantern before the game started, which was a UV flashlight. And I had UV paints. So I was able to write everything out in a blood red and then go over top of it with a UV orange. So when they lit it up, they could see the password through all of the light, which is so fun. Everyone was like, how did you do that? I was like, I don't know. It barely worked. But it was really cool.
And this is like one of the few things about the in-person that makes it so special. Yeah, I like doing online. It's good, especially if you have the craving to play D&D and you're just like, I must play D&D. I've had a D&D drought for months. Do you use music for immersion at your table?
I do. Yeah. I have 2 speakers set up. So I have one on one side of my living room and one on the other. And then I have it like set to my phone. So I can just change the music whenever I want. One of the things that I do that I think is really funny that I haven't heard anyone else mention before is that I have all of my characters or my players send me a character death song. When their character dies, I turn it on to whatever song they've chosen, and then I will narrate their afterlife moment and for their death scene. Which has been very fun because one of my players was like, gave me a real song that was like emotional to the core, and the other one gave me the Brady Bunch theme song. So
okay, that is actually an amazing idea. Oh, I have to use that. This is actually a big topic on D&D threads right now, is how people deal with character death. With character death, there are some tables that actually don't do death. I found that out. And I found that very fascinating. Definitely, if it's something at your table, you discuss at session 0, because there definitely is people who they don't like character death. My table, we've talked about it, what I like to do, and now I'm going to add your idea to this.
yes.
And maybe you'll add mine. So I'm going to give what I do for deaths for characters. They get knocked out at my table. I roll all the death saves.
Oh, fun.
None of the players know if their character is going to die or not. If I roll their final death save, they get a whole free turn to do whatever they want. I give most of my DM control over to them because it creates a moment where if they're fighting a big bad and the big bad is nearly full health, obviously the caveat to this is they can't just be like, oh, I killed a big bad, but like they can do some real significant damage, and I will give that to them. Because there is one thing with character deaths. Usually there's this awkward moment of, I didn't get closure to my character. And that is so big. I've had a few characters die. I'm like, oh, like I have no closure with my characters that I love. But
Yeah.
I feel like giving pretty much all agency to the player gives them closure, gets them to really control how they go out and see exactly what they do. Also, it creates epic memories at the table.
I like that. I like the concept of getting like a free action because I've definitely had a character die and she died for dice rolls, and I get it. It's fine. Not mad about it. No, I had a character and she got eaten by dire wolves in the woods, which is a bummer. And I just happened to roll really terribly. It was an in-character thing to do, but she ran off with 1 HP, ran into a pack of 3 wolves, died immediately, which I get it. So I can't be mad about it.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a thing where you're just like, but I didn't get to say goodbye. I want to do something else and have a moment at least. So I think it would be nice to, even in that moment, if it's not I'm going to attack the dire wolves or whatever, but even just being like, I want to write a letter or I want to, craft something to give to the next of kin. I think that would be nice.
And I think that's why I made that rule because it's a way to say goodbye in a really fun way. I think that's also fun, like crafting something or throwing like their magic sword at the fighter and being like, you carry on this flame. This sword was passed down from my ancestors. Now it's your torch to bear now.
Yeah, because then also I feel like that gives like ties to other characters, which like affects their states of mind and all the things that they think are important now. So maybe that person is just, oh man, now I got a sword that I have to take care of forever.
Because of that, it creates this character dynamic. Well, fuck, my friend just died, and maybe this sword actually was their favorite sword, so it could either go one of two ways. I can't use this sword. It reminds me too much of my dear friend. Like, how can I use it with all these memories and him not being here? Or on the other end, my friend fucking died for this sword. I am going to use it and I am going to avenge his family.
Yes.
And that's a fun thing about being a player, given those things from other players of just, oh, where am I going to take this? And it's like this super exciting thing.
Yeah, my players, they lost a party member, which was so sad. But when they went to go bury his body, they were like, oh, we're just going to take the stuff that he's had on him, like magic items or whatever. But they decided which magic items they were going to bury him with. And one of them was a pillow that automatically gave you the most restful sleep of your life. So they were like, he needs it if he's going to be resting forever. And I was like, oh my God.
That's honestly so sweet.
It was so sweet. He had a jar of spices that would create any sort of spice that you wanted in the moment. And they were gonna take it. And right before they poured all the dirt back over his body, they were like, actually, we're gonna keep him with the spices because it meant so much to him, like emotionally. And I was like, you're gonna make me cry over like a fake magic item. And it's just paprika.
I love that. That's why I love this game so much, is because of those like special little things that players do that as dungeon masters we do that can like influence the story for everybody. And it definitely creates those really fun moments or really emotional moments that really just stick with you long after that session's gone.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I feel like you don't even remember the session like when you are like sitting there and rolling dice, but you remember it like you're watching a movie.
Yeah.
You're like, I remember when this thing happened.
Yeah, and it's always months or years later. That reminds me of a story about this character that I played, and this, and this. And the person just like, what?
Yeah. Because no one else cares, but you're like, you have to listen. This is so important.
This is a very impactful story.
Right. Like, you had to be there.
You had to be there, but it was so emotional.
Yeah, no, oh my gosh. I have some of the best stories from D&D that I'm just like, no one else could possibly care about this, but I care about it.
What's really fun is my players really like Hero Forge.
Yes, that's
like
super cool.
They can customize their miniatures at the table, so it is actually their character, so they can be a bit more immersed with their miniature.
I have minis for all of my players, and it was before I had a 3D printer, so they're all like whiz kids or whatever, but I hand paint them all, so when they show up I'm always like, and this is you. And I'm like, I love you.
Absolutely love that. Here's a little personal touch. The game, oh, I love that. The big difference is we kind of hit on the props and miniatures for perks of in-person. For online, what has your experience been with playing D&D online?
Well, for all of the folks who don't know, you're my first online DM. So
that I am.
So I've had a great time, personally.
Yeah.
Let's see. I played with you.
Yes.
And then I've played a couple of things with some family across, country and stuff. And then I haven't really played much outside of that. I played a couple of one-shots with people. I don't really run or try to like do online campaigns, mainly because I have in person now, and I think in person is a little bit more exciting.
Yes.
I guess,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term there. But I am currently finishing up a little campaign online, and that's been going really good. I think it's hard sometimes because it's just harder to read other people and know when they're gonna interrupt and talking over each other and like all that stuff. But I think
Yeah.
it is definitely a useful tool for sure.
Yeah. Because I definitely online for when one of your players is sick from your in person so that they can still join, but online, it can be a little awkward though, because it's just, oh, are they talking? So it's like a little bit like, oh, like a juggle. Because, like, in my experience, I've done essentially the vast majority of my DMing and playing has been online. I actually thoroughly love it just because it's just what I've known for the majority of my D&D life. Because I have because the great thing about online is you meet amazing people. Amazing.
Like you.
Like you. Honestly, I have lifelong friends because I posted a thing to Reddit and saying, "Hey, I'm starting a D&D game. Who wants to join?" And so I've met numerous people that way, and I don't regret that at all. The downside, though, is online games tend to fizzle out as fast as popcorn pops.
Yes, that is so super true.
Beware if you do decide to do online games. That is a real big possibility unless you manage to find the diamond in the rough, amazing players, and games that actually go on for months and maybe years.
Yeah.
I don't, yeah, I think the longest online game I've had was like half a year.
That's longer than anything I've even played online. So that's impressive that you even got that far, I think.
With online, I honestly think the best benefit is just making friends from everywhere and anywhere in the world. And you get
Yes.
to meet so many people. I met you, and we're really good friends. We've been friends for what,
8?
5?
No.
No. Oh, yeah, I guess 8 years. Oh, you've been
Yeah, 7 maybe.
7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, because it's so much easier to cancel on an online game because you're not seeing the people that you're like canceling with. Where like in person, if my friends don't show up, I'll be like, "Excuse me,
Yeah.
like, what are we doing?"
Because that's a huge thing that I find people are like, well, I'm not actually going to see them. So, I mean, I can make an excuse to just not show up. One person misses one session. It's okay, let's reschedule for next week. Everybody good for this date? Yeah, we're all good. That date happens, and then next thing you know, you're just like, you're not playing, you're just like chatting to them online. You still like them as people. It's just,
Yeah, like the game's just gone.
yeah, the game's gone, but at least you made a friend.
Yeah.
At least that's a bonus.
That's so true. We love making friends. I think also that it's more often than not that when you find people online, there's like a huge time difference. So that's also super hard to be like, everyone being like, yeah, I can play at 5 p.m. my time, which is 2 p.m. your time, and we'll match up and whatever. And you're like, okay, I guess I just won't sleep ever. Like, I'll be up at 2 a.m. to play this game. Although that is a positive for people who work overnights when they're already awake and they can just find an online game that's 2 a.m. their time, and you can be like, oh great, I'm already up.
Exactly. It's just, that's like the cool thing about online is like, ooh, I would really like to play a session of D&D right now. Okay. There's one. Okay.
Right.
Am I accepted? Yes. Okay. And then you can just play within an hour.
Yeah. No, it's really good. It's also great if you like only have specific times that you're open. Because like sometimes in person people are like, oh, we only do Saturdays or whatever. And then online you can just be like, I have Thursdays at 1 p.m. and you can sort it. And you're like, I'm gonna do that one.
There's honestly like a lot of bonuses to online. But I mean, my preferred is still in person.
Yeah. There's something magic about in person. Definitely, it feels different, and it's like a weird thing to try to describe because you're like, yeah, no, it's like the same, and then you're like, maybe. So like, but it's such like it's so weird because it's like a tangible feeling where you're just like, this is so much more like bonding and real and like immersive, but like online is still really fun. So
Like, you can't go wrong. You're still playing D&D. A great resource if you want a good mixture of online and in person. Look up your local city or town on Reddit. I've met some friends through Reddit for my in-person games. It's like a good mixture, especially if you want to try the in-person. Also, if you have a game store, it's not going to be it's going to be closer to an online session where, because like you're just playing with a bunch of strangers and you're just like, but you're still going to have that fun tactile experience of Dungeons and Dragons. So like game stores are also fantastic. Also, support your local game store.
let's talk about players.
Yeah, let's talk about players. New player advice.
New player advice. I did that mainly because I would just like I needed like a common thread, and I was like, I don't really like when TikToks have like intros. So I was like, oh, I'm just gonna do this, and then it stuck, and I was like, well, now I can't stop doing it.
Because we're both like dungeon masters, like you're primarily a dungeon master.
Right now, yes.
Yeah.
I used to be primarily a player, and I dungeon mastered. That's not a verb, but whatever. I've dungeon mastered before, and then so this campaign that I'm running right now is like the longest I've ever consistently been a DM.
When it comes to your players, like how do you integrate, what do you like to do to integrate your characters' backstories to your game?
My characters' backstories are my entire game, actually. When I originally started this campaign, it was just my husband and like two people from his job that he wanted to get to know. And I was like, "Oh, I'll just DM. That's fine. I don't need to be a player." And I didn't have a plot. I was just like, "Everyone make a character. We'll do like a one shot. We'll see how it goes. We'll figure it out." And by the time that everyone decided that they were still going to keep playing, I think 3 sessions in, I was like, oh, I should probably come up with a plot for this. So I took everybody's backstories, and like the first part of my entire campaign was basically built off of one of my players whose entire background was like, I'm hunting angels and I'm doing all this stuff. And I was like, all right, cool. We're hunting angels now in this campaign. And now my entire campaign, which is like a god who has lost the love of his life, who is like a goddess, and now he's avenging her death by killing every single bit of humanity that he could find. And it like all just started because I was like, I don't know, you want to hunt angels? Let's do it. Every single move that I have made for my campaign has literally just been like, well, who's next in the lineup? What's your plot? You're now intertwined into the main plot. Because my players are the game, I think, for me.
See, I take a different approach because I feel like my games are a lot more planned out because I am very story and character driven. I'll create a world or take a module, Strixhaven here, and homebrew the shit out of it because my reading comprehension is bad. I have really bad reading comprehension. I use books more influences, and I'll be like, oh, I really like this. I'm going to take it out and make my own little story out of it. So for me, I like knowing exactly what the world is like so that I can give that to my players so that they can build their characters around characters in that world. And then I let them have full creative control because they may have ideas that I may not have thought about adding into the game. And so I was like, well, that's way better. I'm going to really work on that. Currently in this campaign, one of the players' fathers pretty much disappeared without a trace because me and each player, we have talked in depth about who their character is. And they actually wrote out their backstory, who they are, who their family is, what their family's influences are, because everybody just actually on a whim, they didn't even actually coordinate it. Everybody comes from a very wealthy family.
No.
I decided to tie them in all together, that they all kind of knew each other to not create that awkward, oh, I don't know who you are. Because that was one thing about before starting this in session 0 that we talked about, because my wife Claire, she really doesn't like when all the heroes just come together and they don't know each other. There's that awkward preamble of getting to know each other and there's not really that closeness. I took that from her and was like, okay, this is something that you want. Let's actually get everybody to know each other, to get rid of that weird, awkward, oh, hi, I'm Sir Mindy, what have you. It's listening to the characters and doing the collaborative storytelling before the actual collaborative storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely.
That's kind of like what I do. And then because I have the chaotic mind that I do and have an extensive background in improv, I record all my sessions because I know how improv heavy I am. And if there are moments because like I let my players take full control, I have their background in hand. And if there's like a moment where I can use their backstory, I'll be like, okay, using this part of your backstory and going to mold it into something else. And then the really cool thing is, as we play D&D, we actually do this back and forth where I take their ideas and I change it. And it's like telephone, where it's just like, oh yeah, my dad's really nice. And then I take it and it's like, oh, he's a little bit corrupt when he was in college, but now he's not. And so then I kind of lob it back at them later on. So then it creates this back and forth of I'm creating the story, they're creating the story. And it's just so much fun to integrate their backstories that way, where during the game, as let's say 5 sessions happens, what I like doing is talking to the players and actually saying, how are you feeling about your character's integration into the world? Do you feel they are part of the world? And if it's no, they don't really feel like they're part of the world yet, that's when you have the conversation and open communication with them. It's like, okay, so let's change some things for the background. And I think that's like some things, like, because I'm very planned, well, somewhat planned, because yeah, a lot of improv. I think it's important to involve your players in every step of the way, especially when it's their characters.
Yeah. Yeah, because everybody has their love for their characters and everything, and it's, as someone who's been a player for a while, it is hurtful when you're like, I made this whole backstory just for you, and your DM's like, that's great, I don't care. And you get to be like, oh man. So it definitely feels better when like you present it and it's more of a back and forth. That's always great.
Yeah, because I think that's definitely a trap dungeon masters can get into of, oh yeah, write the backstory of your character. And the DM gets it, they read it. At first it's really exciting, but then essentially the dungeon master can just be like, it's your character, I'm not going to touch your character. And I'm not going to touch your character's backstory. Why would I bring your family in? I know I said that for you to create 5 NPCs that your character knows, but I'm not going to use them. So then why?
Mm-hmm. Like, why did you ask even?
Yeah. Why did you ask me to write a backstory if you're not going to use it?
I've been kind of lucky, I guess, in the sense that my players currently, no offense to them, they don't really have structured backstories. I've got one of the classic I have amnesia characters. One of my players just brought back an old character who he left previously earlier in the campaign. So we've got him with his backstory that's been fleshed out because he played for a year with this characters. That one has a backstory. And my players, when they do have backstories, it's a little bit more less specific and more of, I had an NPC who knew of a place. One of my players is, I was best friends with a dragon and I know that there's a vault somewhere. I don't know where it is and I don't know what's in it. And I'm like, that's great. That is going in my tools, and I will pull it out later.
Any players that are listening to this part, do that. Add shit. I always encourage my players, feel free to add shit, because there's a vault somewhere. Okay. There's a quest I can write up. Now you gave me an idea. Cool. Now let's involve the party in that. I love that.
Yes. It's so much fun. I think that my personal DM style is that I have limited to no care about the world that I've built, which I think as a DM is kind of a rarity.
Yeah.
I think, because I feel like most DMs are like, I wrote this story and I care about it. This is the world I built. I really care about it. And I'm just like, it doesn't matter. If you want to blow it up, you want to blow it up. I don't really care. So having characters that have their own goals or that show up and they're like, I know of this thing. I'm like, okay. I have one of my players, he has an old school that he used to go to. He's like a blood hunter from like a school that raises them, kind of like Witcher style.
Yeah.
And my other player is a soul that was tied to a sword that was years and years ago when technology was advanced. And when they made it to this keep in the original school, my sword boy, he was like, oh, I know this place. I used to live in a place just like this. There was 20 of them and they were all up in the sky. And I was like, all right, yeah, that's what happened to your old civilization. They all fell out of the sky, and that's what happened. Let's roll from there. I don't care. I love when my players are just like, here's a backstory. And I'm like, great, that's the campaign. I don't need to do any work now. You've written it for me.
For me, yes, I write my stories and I create the world, meaning create the world so that they can pretty much do whatever the fuck they want to do in the world. I want players that will be like, I want a vault. There's a vault. Or I was a sentient sword. I love that. I'm kind of jealous of that.
The little tangent on the sword. My player is a flight attendant. He is gone almost all the time, just randomly. He got rid of an old character that he had as he was like, I don't know when I'm going to be here or whatever. So he was like, created a character that soul was tied to the sword. So when he was on a flight and he couldn't make it, his character just became the sword. So then the party member just had a sword that had morphed abilities of what his actual player could do. And then when he's able to play, he just becomes not a sword anymore. It worked out really well.
That kind of screams anime to me, like
kind of.
Oh, like an isekai.
Yeah. Exactly. He was like, yeah, I don't really care, but I probably will only be at 50% of the sessions now, so here's a sword. And I'm like, all right.
When I'm a player at the table, I'm the chaotic fun one that just comes up with random shit and just kind of throws it out there. And here you go, DM, play with it.
Yes.
I only play chaotic characters.
I feel like I thrive with very chaotic players. Someone on one of my TikTok friends has lovingly referred to my DM style as freeform jazz. When I get chaotic players, I'm like, yes, I love it. I hate doing work as a DM, so if you're doing all the work for me, I'm in.
You're essentially, you come primarily from a player perspective. As me, I pretty much played 3 sessions and then just decided to jump right into being a dungeon master. Your dungeon master style is completely different from mine, and I love it. Can I get a teleport spell and just join your Monday game? Because I would add even more chaos. Your table sounds like so much fun.
Some of the craziest things I think that I've ever seen in Dungeons and Dragons. I'm just like, oh, this is what we're doing now. One of my other players, while they're at this keep school, they like walked into a classroom and stuff, and they were able to like basically be like, yeah, we already know what we're doing. We're like level 10 adventurers. We don't need to be here. And so I was like, oh yeah, you guys get to teach a class now. That's going to be your job. And so they like went to go teach a class and they introduced themselves by different names for no reason. Like their character names are Dante and Lothar. And when they got in the room, they're like, yeah, I'm Dennis. And this is Dennis. We're D&D. And I was like, what are we doing? Why are we lying for no reason?
Just for the shits and giggles. That's the kind of shit I would pull.
No, it's so fun. I love my players. Did you just say things sometimes and you're just like, oh, okay.
Let's go with it. Yeah.
Sure.
I love my table because I'm very much the DM who we have a lot of fun at the table. I know I have emotional story beats for my characters, and I want my table to escape from reality, but also feel those emotions. But on the other hand, yes, I'm chaotic, but I'm not chaotic as a DM, and I hate it because I would love to be. Let's just do a stupid shit show campaign of anything happens. I would love to do that, but I'm too structured to do that.
That's really nice because I know that there's definitely some moments in my campaign where people are like, their characters are going through it and they want to get involved with that. And it is
Yeah.
hard sometimes when somebody is, oh my gosh, we found a letter from my long lost dad or whatever, and then someone else is just like, I'm jumping off of the cliff, and you're like, oh, okay.
Oh my god.
It definitely ruined some
So-
emotional takes, which I don't think my campaign is, I don't think I would qualify it as like serious. I think
Yeah.
we're definitely more of a wild kind of group of people.
I wouldn't say that my table is serious either. We still have so much fun. They still do shit. One of Claire's character's catchphrases is, so he's a very religious man. He's with a party of just very eccentric characters, and I'm okay with that.
I love that. That's so great.
That's now a thing with our group. If like things are getting a little lewd outside of the game, like someone will be like, and I'm okay with that.
I love that as a catchphrase. That's amazing. There's like kind of a
Yeah.
similar character. My husband, Jordan, he is playing a character who is very much, he's like serious and he's here to do a job and get everything sorted. And everyone else is just absolutely wild. Most of the time, he's just, Tracker takes a deep breath and he walks away.
When things start getting wild and the players embrace that wildness, it's like, oh, they're being a bit chaotic. Okay. And then I can kind of play off of it. It's just like, oh, I'm not used to this. Oh, should I? Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's embrace it. Okay. We're having fun. This is great. Ready to go. Okay. Now let's reel it back. I've experienced a few moments like that, but for the most part, it's very much, they'll take the story a little bit in a direction that I've given them little story beats, and they're like, ooh, because I give them like, so you see this, and this. You have a choice where you want to go. I haven't really planned. I just was like, oh, these would be neat things to explore, especially out of their backstory. And so then it's just, let's see if they bite. And if they do, they do. If they don't, we'll see where they go.
I think most of my game is actually just trying to rein my players in. We had my player, Dante, he told me he was going to retire his character at the end of this little session arc. And I was like, okay, whatever. I had them come back to the Sword Coast, which is essentially like 3 years in the future, all destroyed, whatever, context. And he had managed to kill the king of one of these areas, as was his entire character goal. So 3 years in the future, after everything had exploded, the citizens that were still alive were like, oh my god, he must be like the best. He killed the king. He like freed us all from this tyranny, and then he just left for 3 years. So they built an entire society that they called Danteville, and I was basically just like, here's the city, decide what you want from it. It ended up being a city that was only run by committees. So if you needed something, there was a farming committee, there was a there was like
HOA.
Yeah, there's a HOA, there was like a donut committee. Like anytime they were like, I need to talk to someone who knows something about this, I'm like, great, you can go find the committee. Like there was a committee who's in charge of knowing what all the committees were. My favorite was one of my players hunted down just a guy on his way to work, stole his identity, went to his job interview as the guy, got the job, and then worked for a full day doing paperwork. And I was like, why did we do this? Everyone had a great time, but I was very confused. So I had to turn that into something. He was actually working for the IRS, which was the Invisible Robbery Society, and they were a gang that went around and collected protection money from all the shopkeepers to keep them safe from other more nefarious committees. And most of my game is just that. Various areas. It was fun. He also, after he stole that guy's identity, was like, maybe he was a bad guy. He got thrown in jail for some unrelated reason. And so my player was like, he's in jail. Maybe he was a bad guy. Let me go see his family. So they went to his family's house and knocked on the door. And the dude's wife answered and was like, hello. And he was like, hi, are you happy? And she was like, yes. And then he was like, interesting. And then just absolutely just whiffed the RP, whiffed every single roll he was attempting to make, and threw 500 gold pieces at her and was like, okay, bye. Yeah, most of my game is just that, I think.
The more I talk about D&D, and especially other dungeon masters' experiences playing D&D and hearing their experiences with their players, the more I come to realize how special this game is to so many people, because one table's experience is going to be vastly different from the other table's experience. And I
Yeah,
absolutely
it's
love
so
that.
much fun. I love that every table can just be so different and still be playing the same game somehow.
Yeah. How is this table doing a chaotic mess and then the other table, they're bawling their eyes out? This is such a weird scene. Wait, they're playing the
And
same
I think
game?
it's also
How?
so cool because, like, when I'm DMing, everything's crazy. It's wild. If I had to list you a rule and I actually know what it is, hell is frozen over. And and when my husband DMs, like the same players at the same table, they are on it. They are invested. They're listening. The combat is very intense. They know exactly what they're doing, and it's way more structured. And I'm just like, it's just a change of who's in charge, which I think is so funny with the same people.
So wild, especially since it's the
Yeah.
same players. Really
I think
cool.
that's so fun.
As we wind down from these amazing conversations, we've talked about how we utilize props and miniatures to our own online and in-person conversation, and how we actually integrate our players into our games. It's just so fun to know that you and I, though we have different styles, we also
And
share
I
that
think it's nice
connection.
because I think, especially you being one of my first DMs, you've left a little imprint in how I DM. So I think you can always pick up things from all your DMs and everything. I think I've definitely learned from being DM'd by you.
I think that's very important, especially for DMs to know, is I have learned from other dungeon masters that I played with and have really taken some of their stuff to heart, because everybody's different, and even players, all of you are different, and it makes this game so special. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Awaken Cast. If you enjoyed our chat, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Threads at The Awakencast for updates and behind the scenes fun. If you want to dive deeper and connect with fellow adventurers, you absolutely don't want to miss joining our amazing Discord community. It is where the real magic happens. I'm your host, Jeremy, joined by my dear friend, Rachel. And we're reminding you to stay curious, stay kind, and keep being awesome. Until next time, happy adventuring.